In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And God said, "Let there be light." And God separated the light from the darkness. And he saw that the light was good. Then he separated the waters of the earth, creating the skies and seas. The earth brought forth vegetation, and God saw that it was good. And God made two great lights. Then he made the animals. Then he created you.
Now, through the past 9 weeks, we've been looking at two very different stories about where we came from. On the one hand, Darwin's theory of evolution. On the other hand, the Bible's teaching about creation. In the first part of the series, this morning, we're going to do something that is really building on everything we've said up till now. And so in some ways, I'll give you a warning. I'm going to make certain assumptions, but they're all based on what we've done up till now. If you're visiting for the first time and you're going to hear, well, you haven't proven that, well, you got to go back to previous weeks. See, in the first part of the series, we looked at the evidence of science, and we asked, does the evidence of science support the teaching of evolution or the teaching of creation? And we don't just believe creation just because the Bible says and close our eyes to it. No, what we've looked at and seen is that God has revealed himself in creation. So the more that we go into creation, the more we look into science, the evidence of science consistently agrees with the biblical teaching of creation, whereas the teaching of science at the same point consistently disagrees and calls into question the teaching of Darwin's theory of evolution. But then we've also looked at how the question of where we come from, the question of creation and evolution, is more than just even a scientific question. It's ultimately a worldview question. It's not just science. It's not just even religion. You see, because both evolution and creation both claim to answer the biggest questions in life. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is the purpose of life? Both try to explain ultimate reality, where everything came from. And it's vital that when we understand this, we see it as a worldview, because what we believe about this issue of our origin will ultimately define what we believe about all the other big issues in life. In fact, we're going to see this morning some of the most controversial issues of our day are all ultimately rooted in a disagreement about creation and evolution. We don't see it that way, but that's where they're rooted. So the question we're asking is this, did we evolve as a product of chance, of random chance, or are we created by and designed by an all-powerful, all-knowing God? See, again, that defines all aspects. Think about it just for a moment. See, if evolution is true, then it's not only that we have biologically evolved, then everything in our world is evolved. It's all the product of chance and of natural causes. So the idea of what a family is has evolved. It's a product of chance and natural causes. It's not designed. The idea of what gender is, male and female, and that's something that evolved out of necessity and has been defined by our culture. The idea of sexuality and sexual ethics, that has evolved in time, and there's no absolute truth. See, but on the other hand, if we are created by God, if the world is designed, then it's not only that we are biologically designed, we see the picture of design in God's creation biologically, but every aspect of our world is designed. So the family and the structure and marriage is something that is God designed. Our gender and what it means to be male and female and who we are as individuals is a product of God's design. Sex was designed by God. It was created by God. It was made enjoyable by God. And the ethics that should shape our sexuality are designed by God as well. And one of the vital points that we've seen through this is that how we view these things will literally come from evolution and creation. If you believe in evolution, what you're going to see with all these things, well, no, they're not designed. And the height of our health as an individual and as a culture should be that we look at the culture and we're constantly evolving, moving forward. We're changing to be able to adapt to the time and the culture. That's what's healthy. But if we're the products of creation, of God's design, not only have we been intelligently designed, but everything in our world is designed, then the ultimate health for us as individuals and the health for us as a culture is going to be defined by how well we align ourselves to that design. If we're changing and evolving to fit the needs of our culture and we're moving further away from the design, we're becoming less and less healthy. We're becoming more and more broken, both as individuals and our culture. So it's a vital idea, and you see how all these things, it's not just a question, again, just biology. It starts there, but it goes beyond that. But let's even go beyond that, and let's look at some of these questions. But to even understand some of these things, I want to affirm one idea that's really important, and that is the idea of absolute truth. See, it's common to believe when we talk about any of these issues that there are distinct realms of truth. Some will say that, on the one hand, you have scientific truth, and so scientific truth is a matter of science, it's a matter of fact, it's absolute. And by absolute, what that means is it's always true for everyone, no matter what you believe about it. So it's not your faith that makes an absolute scientific thing true, it's the accuracy of how well it aligns to reality. So, for example, the law of gravity is true absolutely. It's whether you believe it or not, it's true. It always works. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. You could believe it equals 5, but it's not going to change the absolute truth of that mathematical fact. But those that hold to this idea of two kinds of truth would say, but on the other hand, you have a second realm of truth, moral and spiritual truth. This truth, they would say, is based not on fact, but on belief and on faith. It's relative. And by relative, what they mean by that is that it's not true for everybody. See, what is true for you is based on what you personally believe, what you think about something. Well, that's your truth. And so they would say, well, if you believe religion, if you believe that Jesus is God, and well, I believe that Buddha is God. Well, Jesus is your God, that's true for you. Buddha is my God, that's true for me. And questions of morality. Well, I believe certain things about sexual morality. You believe other things about sexual morality. Well, that's your truth. This is my truth. And the only thing that we can say is that it's relative, and the only thing that's wrong is for me to try to force my truth upon you. You see, I should feel free to believe whatever I believe, but I can't tell you that your truth is wrong, because it's true for you. Now, that's so common in our culture that we often don't think about it when we hear it. But what we have to realize is it's total nonsense. There are no two spheres of truth. Something is either true or not. That's true morally, it's true, socially, it's true biologically. It's true if it conforms to reality. And the more that it conforms to reality, the more that it is true. And the less it conforms to the reality, the less it's true. And so here we say, if God created the world, well, that's something that is not only a biblical fact, it's scientific, it's historical. If it happened, it happened. You see, that's not a religious, it's a truth in every aspect of being. And not only that, if he created the world, then every aspect of the world has been designed by him. And so the moral structures of our world, the family structures of the world, all these things are designed. So therefore, all truth in all these areas is absolute. Meaning it's always true for everyone, whether you believe it or not, whether you think it or not, whether you like it or not. Because it's reality. And what we're called to do is to understand the reality of God's design, the reality of how the world works. And the healthier we are is the more we align ourselves with that reality. And the less we are aligned with that reality, the less healthy we are. See, that's a basic idea. So truth is defined by the degree that it conforms to what is real. Now, so the rest of this morning, what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at some issues and say, okay, let's take these ideas, God's design, let's look at the idea of absolute truth and see how, if you believe in creation and if you believe in evolution, you have very, very different ideas about some of the most controversial issues of our day. And I will acknowledge that we're going to touch on a lot of very sensitive things. I'm going to be very politically incorrect, not intending to be so. But what I'm going to do is I'm seeking to be able to speak the truth. My goal is not to share my opinion on these issues, because I don't think that my opinion really matters much. My goal is to be able to say, here's what God's word says. If God created the heavens and the earth, if God has revealed himself through the Bible, things that we've talked about and really laid the foundation for in the previous weeks of these studies, then what does it mean as we apply those truths to these different areas of life? The first is we have a huge issue of now in our culture talking about gender. And what is the truth about gender? And as we look at this issue of gender, let's start by saying, let's look at the evolutionary perspective. So from an evolutionist perspective, what does evolution say about gender? According to evolution, everything is the result of chance. And the whole idea of our gender is the result of, mutation driven by biological necessity for the reproduction of our species. It's not designed. So the idea of we just happen to have male and female because it works. And you just happen to be a male or a female because that's the luck of the draw. It was by chance. It was only shaped to meet the biological needs of reproduction for that time. So that if the time changes, then we should expect our genders to evolve and our understanding of what those genders mean to evolve with time as well. Because part of what it meant to be masculine and feminine, well, that was a cultural evolution. So again, as our culture has changed, as we become, less, more of a knowledge society, well, we should expect the ideas of gender to evolve as well. So since it's not a matter of design, not only should we expect some evolution, but we should understand that your idea of gender and who you are is likewise a matter of chance. It's the luck of the draw. And since it's all the matter of chance, we shouldn't be surprised if nature sometimes mixes up some of the parts. So in other words, we shouldn't be surprised if you have someone who is born externally a male, but internally a female. So you have different wiring, because it's all by chance. See, that's an evolutionary perspective. Now, if you understand that, you understand now some of the recent push in our culture for transgender rights. I mean, the poster boy, or I don't know if I should say poster boy or poster girl of the issue is Bruce Jenner, and who now calls himself Caitlyn Jenner. And so here you have someone who's saying, no, I was born a male, but really I'm a female, so I've now had surgery to change me to a female, and so I'm now being the real me. Now, all of that, again, makes sense if we're the result of evolution. But what we've seen is that the story of evolution is a false one. It makes a lot of sense. It's argued, it's accepted by many people and argued as fact, but the fact is it's not. We've seen the evidence is against it. It's not only what the Bible says, the evidence of science itself proves it's wrong. No, we are created by God. And if we are created and designed by God, we have to realize that God doesn't make mistakes. Look what it says in Psalm 139. David says this, "For you formed my inner parts and you knitted me together in my mother's wombs." Now, I want you to notice that, what does it say there? You form my inner parts, the inner wiring of who I am. You did that in the very beginning. My God, you designed that. Verse 14, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame," the outer part of me. "My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth." And so what's he saying? God, I realize that you created me. You created the inner part of who I am, and you created the outer part of who I am. And you designed me just the way that you intended it to be, and you didn't mess it up. Now, some people say, well, no, I feel like I'm a woman trapped in a man's body or a man trapped in a woman's body, and the wirings are mixed. And you've got to say, well, that makes sense if you believe in evolution, but it makes no sense if you believe in creation. And for any of us who believe in creation and we hear those arguments, what we've got to realize is that they're based on a worldview that we reject as wrong. We know that is wrong. No, if God is a creator, if he is a designer, then what we have to realize is that he has designed each one of us perfectly according to his design. And there's some people that feel that they are, feel a certain inclination towards another way. Yeah, they do. Is that wrong? Is that, no, there are people that feel that way. There are people that feel a lot of ways that are incorrect, that are out of line with truth and reality. And we've got to love those people, but loving them doesn't mean that you affirm their thoughts. Again, I mentioned this back in the summer when we were in Psalm 139. And if I go to somebody, and if you have somebody that comes and says, well, I believe I'm George Washington. I believe I'm Superman. They're making claims about what they believe that is out of line with reality. And the loving thing isn't to say, well, let's create a world where we can let you pretend to be George Washington. We'll have people pretend to be Martha Washington and pretend to be all these people. And that's not loving. See, what you realize is somebody's living out of reality, and the loving thing to do isn't to encourage them further out of the reality. It's to speak the truth to them and to lovingly bring them back into reality, because they're going to be healthy when their lives align with reality. Now, we understand that if it's something like George Washington or Superman, but somehow now we think when somebody thinks that he's a woman who's really a man, he's seeing himself out of reality, we've got to say, well, we have to affirm him. We have to change so that we say that his perception of truth is right. My friends, if we believe the Bible, that's not loving. And sometimes it seems difficult to speak things that people don't want to hear, but the loving thing to do is to speak the things that they need to hear. Because you're never going to be healthy as you get further and further away from God's design. You're going to become more and more broken as a person. And the loving thing to do is to graciously speak truth and to lead them back to God. Each one of us back to saying, am I aligning my heart, my life with God? Now that's that whole thing. Now let's think about the creationist view. What does the Bible say about the whole concept of gender? The Bible teaches at the very beginning, when God created the world, he created mankind, and he created us with gender. And those genders are not the result of accident, they're the result of his design. Let's go back to the very first description of his creation of mankind. Genesis chapter 1. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in the likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the seas and the birds of the air, and over the livestock over all the earth and all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his image, and the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And when you look at that, what I want you to do is, there's a couple things that are really interesting. One is that right in the beginning, you have verse 26. God said, let us make man. God speaks in the plural. It's something that, from the very beginning, God first reveals himself. He reveals something in us that we didn't understand more until the New Testament, the whole idea of the Trinity. But even, that's just a little side note, but beyond that, what's interesting is that you see God using a unique combination of plural and singular here as he talks about man. Look what he says. Then God said, let us make man, singular, in our image, in our likeness, and let us make them, plural, to rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man, singular, in his image. In the image of God, he created him, seemingly singular, male and female, he created them, plural. And it's a unique combination, and you've got to say, what is he saying here? The key to understanding this is the word that's translated man is a different word that's translated male. And most people agree that the word translated man here is probably better translated with the idea of mankind. So if we read it that way, what we see is in verse 26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, and let us make them, the people of mankind, to rule over the fish of the sea. Go to verse 27, it continues on. So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created mankind. And what was that mankind he created? Male and female, he created them. Now, what's the point of all this? What we need to see is that what it's teaching is that God created mankind in his image. He didn't create man in his image. What he's saying is that when I created mankind, he created mankind with male and female. So mankind is divided into two parts. And he takes in this male and female and he puts some of his image, some of his attributes into the female, and he puts some of the attributes more fully into the male. And so when you look throughout the Bible, I'm not saying that God is female or that the Bible, when God speaks of himself, he speaks in male terms. I don't think we should change what the Bible says. But what the Bible also teaches that there's attributes of God that are clearly female. And there are times, God talks about that he puts his, wings over his chicks in very female terms, that he cares, like a loving mother. And there are traits that when we look at God that are more what we would think as female, and he put those traits more fully into woman. And there are traits that in our mind that we would see as male, and he put those traits more fully into man. So that the mankind bears God's image together. So when he says, let us create man in my image, what he does is there's a nature that we match together. I can't get that one word out here. We need each other. And the differences that we have that can often frustrate, anybody that's married, you know these differences that we can have between male and female, and they can frustrate us, and because we think so differently, and how do we get along? And we look at these differences, you know what? They're not just by mistake. They're actually designed. God designed it that way. It's for our good. He says, here's what I want you to realize. If we understand this design, it means for men, we need to look to our wives and the women in our lives, and we need to recognize that some of those differences that can frustrate us, we need to learn from them. For women, some of those differences that can frustrate you about men, you need to learn from us. Because there's aspects that we can learn from each other, not only become healthier people, but we can literally learn more about God. Some of the differences, we could spend forever on this, but you think about that. Women tend to be more in touch with their emotions. So the most women you talk about, they use words that are far more descriptive. Most men, how do you feel? Well, bad, good. We don't have a lot of words to that. It's just, we're just not that aware of our emotions. Women are generally more relationship. They've had studies that show that women, on average, speak 2.5 times more words than men speak. And all the men say, that understands it. Yeah, just, it explains. I know I come home, and, I don't get much more than yes and, and out for about a half an hour. Sandy just tells me her day. And that's the difference. Men, God has made us different. We want to be protectors. We want to be warriors. We want to protect. There's something in us that wants to do that. I'm at home and we hear something at night, and Sandy says, I hear something. Well, I'm going to go protect. And so I go out and I look for something to protect. I get a shoe and I go down. I'm ready to protect my home, and I go down. Why? Because there's something that I want to give her security of being her protector. There's huge differences. The way, one of the things the way we solve problems, when we get together so often, we have this discussion and a woman says, well, we need to talk about something. And for a man, we sit there and we say, okay, what's the problem? I want to listen. I want to hear the problem. I want to solve it. And women, they're like, no, I want to tell my feelings. I want to express my feelings. I want the feelings to be validated. And oftentimes we get in a mess because we have this conflict. Here you have a woman trying to share her feelings, and the man's not hearing the feelings. We're just, what's the problem to be solved? Let me show you an example of this. It's one that I think that I know all men will clearly be able to relate to. And it's a wonderful picture of these differences.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
That says it perfectly, doesn't it? You look at that, you say, those are the differences. And we can laugh about those. But one of the things we've got to realize is that the differences that are designed, they can frustrate us. But, if we understand that they're designed, we need to understand that they're good. That they might be difficult, but we need to affirm them. We're going to come back to that in a minute, because what I want to do is to go to that next step, which is closely related. It's not only a difference about gender. What about marriage? What is the truth about marriage? Because again, if you believe in evolution and you believe in creation, you'll come to two different ideas. So let's take the question of evolution. What is the evolutionary view about marriage? The whole idea, according to evolution, is that the idea of family is not one that has been designed, but it's one that has evolved. It's evolved socially. So it's not biological design, it's social design. It's evolved socially over the centuries to foster an environment for the procreation of our species, because that's what evolution is all about. And so in certain times, based on certain realities of economics and, having to work hard and things like, live out in a field, there was a certain evolution of what family meant, especially when our population needed to grow. However, we need to remember, according to this view, that we're still evolving, we're still improving. And what has evolved from the time past was for different time, different needs of a different society. But now, as we are in our new society, we're in a more knowledge society, as our population growth in our world has grown to the point that we're more about overpopulation than trying to have more children. See, now the right idea of family or of marriage is one that needs to evolve and change for that time. And so when we look at this, social structures that we may have rejected in the past, like homosexual marriage, is one that we now need to recognize that in our evolving culture, we should embrace, because we're evolving. In fact, this past summer, the Supreme Court ruled that homosexual marriage should be recognized as a legitimate form of marriage, and now that's the law of the land. In his opinion, speaking for the majority, Justice Kennedy referred to evolution as part of his reasoning. He specifically talked about our need to evolve in understanding the law and to adapt to the evolving concept of family. That was in his reasoning. And here you have a Supreme Court justice saying, here's why we think it's wrong. Because if I believe in evolution, well, this is logically true. And it is. And for those that believe in evolution, for those that will argue this, I look at it and say, if that's what you believe, then I can understand why you think that homosexual marriage is okay. Why it's even a good thing. But what we've seen through the study is that evolution, although it's a theory that many people hold to, it's wrong. Again, not only does the Bible say it's wrong, science says it's wrong. And so we are not evolved biologically. And not only that, we have not evolved socially and morally. The idea of marriage and family isn't one that evolved. It isn't one that was even created by the government. It was one that was created and designed at the very beginning of creation by God himself. So we look back to the very beginning, Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. Then the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. So in the beginning, God says, I don't want man to be by himself. I want to create something unique. So he creates now woman. He brings woman to man. And then he joins them together, and then he makes this statement that is at the core of all we believe in marriage. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. That's what God's design. God's design, when you say, okay, what is the creation design? God's design is that for one man and one woman to make a lifetime commitment to each other, to love each other until God separates them by death. And God's design doesn't change with time. God doesn't change, his design doesn't change. Our culture changes, yes, but God's design doesn't change. And the thing that we've seen, again, that we continue to repeat with everything else, is that the more that we align ourselves with God's design, the healthier we will be. The less we are aligned, the more we evolve away from God's design, the less healthy we will be culturally and as individuals. So we've got to say, this is God's design. Is it difficult? Is it one it's not just against homosexual marriage. It's the idea that's saying, no, it's one man, one woman, for life, lifelong commitment. That's his design. Now, why is it that we say, why is it restricted to one man, one woman? Well, let's go back and even see that in this concept of creation. It's designed in the complementary nature of male and female. So we saw not only that in Genesis 1 that God poured part of his character into male, part of his character into female, but then you see that there's a unique design to it. Look at, again, Genesis 2:18. The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper fit for him." Now he says, okay, it's not good for a man to be left alone, so I'm going to make a helper. Literally, it could be translated to be, I'm going to reinforcement. I'm going to help him, somebody that's going to come alongside. And woman not only for man, but then if you look at the scripture, it clearly teaches in Ephesians that men is likewise a helper in the same way for woman. But it's a helper what? Fit for him. And the wording here is a very unusual wording in the original. It's actually two words that come together that could literally be translated as a helper like opposite him. You say, what in the world does that mean? Like opposite. You got to be one or the other. How is something like and opposite? Well, actually, things can be. Let me give you a good illustration of something that we know. Let's think about a puzzle. You think about a jigsaw puzzle, and you have all these pieces. Now, if you have all these pieces and you're trying to say, how do you put it together? If you take two exactly alike pieces and try to fit them together, how do they fit? They don't at all. Now, what if you take two random pieces and you try to squeeze them together? No, they're not going to fit either. What you need to do is that when you look at this puzzle, what you have to do is you have to find two pieces that fit together in the sense that they are like but opposite. They are created complementary so that they have, gaps and grooves where the other one is the exact opposite of that. It's like opposite, perfectly complementary. And that's what we're being told here in Genesis, is that God said, okay, Adam, I'm going to create somebody and send him into your life who has tremendous powers, tremendous ability, who is equal in every way, is like you, but is opposite of you. And in marriage, that's what God's design is. He said, I'm creating marriage so that it's something that is one man, one woman, because out of the two, you're going to have somebody who is like you, but that is opposite you, that is complementary. And it's what you need. It's what your children need. Your children need a male and a female. They need a mom and a dad. And in our marriage, when we look at those differences, we can laugh about, we can look at that, it's not the nail, and we laugh about those differences that can drive us crazy, but what we need to realize is we need them. We need this person who comes into our life with a radically different view, not only of our world, but of ourselves. We have two different people that are opposite in a sense, and God says, here's what I want you to do, is I want you to come together and I want you to become one flesh, one in your thinking. And you look at that and you say, here when you have two different people, what happens? And you try to become one. Does that always happen easily? Should we expect it to happen easily? No, the whole idea of God's design in marriage is to say, I'm creating somebody that you need. And someone, if you come alongside and do the hard work and pursue this, they're different than you, and that's going to cause tension, but they're going to help you grow and become a healthier person. But it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be what you want. I love Proverbs chapter 27, 17. It says, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I was talking to Sandy about this the other day, and, we're having a difference that happens in marriage. And we said, one of the things that when I think about this, what it's saying is that the only way for iron to sharpen iron is for there to be sparks, for there to be friction. If there's no friction, if there's no sparks, what would happen is you'd have soldiers that would be out in the field and they would sharpen swords by taking one against the other, and they would put friction and sparks, and when one would sharpen the other. But if there's no friction, if there's no sparks, there's no sharpening. And so in marriage, if you don't have someone who's like opposite of you, who's creating sparks, you're not going to grow. Or if you have somebody who's like opposite of you and you're not resolving things healthily, one is dominant and one is beat down, or you're not actually dealing with and growing through these stresses, you're not going to grow. You're not going to become the person that God has designed for you to have. But the problem with that is that we live in a consumer mindset, consumer culture. And so in a consumer culture, what we think is we want things that satisfy. We want things that are easy. We don't want somebody who's going to fight back. We want someone who's going to come and meet our needs and affirm who we are. who's going to understand us and not struggle with us. We want someone who's going to fit perfectly in our mind, meaning they're going to meet our needs and they're going to make us happy. See, we're not looking naturally for someone who's like opposite you. So then when we get into our marriage and when sparks fly, we begin to think, well, this isn't right. This shouldn't be right. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be this way. It's supposed to be romantic and blissful. Why are we having all these confrontations? Because what we have to realize is that we're pursuing the marriage that God has called us to be, and part of that is He's put somebody in our life that's different than us to create sparks. You know, when we think about wrong views of marriage, it's not just homosexual marriage is wrong. It's a wrong view that when you say, if you think that marriage is easy, if you have a Hollywood view of marriage, that's wrong. That's not biblical. Now, marriage is wonderful. I love my wife. I love being married. It's a source of great joy and happiness. It's wonderful, but it's not easy. And if I expect it to be easy, I'm never going to discover the blessing that's there. It's not easy. It's not optional. It's not something that you can choose. Well, do we want to get married? We can live together, have kids? No, it's not optional. It's not temporary. It's not, well, we're together until we fall out of love, until it's difficult. No, it's a lifelong commitment. And sometimes when you can't figure out how to continue to love the person, that's where you go back and say, Jesus, teach me to love him. So what does it teach about marriage? Lastly, I'm going to cover this more briefly. What does it teach about sexuality and morality? See, what is the truth there? What is the absolute truth? When we look at it, what does evolution teach? Evolution teaches that basically, again, our whole concept of sexuality is something that has evolved. The idea of family and the whole idea of monogamy, of being committed to one person for life, is something that is the evolutionary necessity because it was something that evolved to try to, again, maximize the raising of children. But it's not something that is necessarily right. And as we go into our culture and we understand that it's more about self-fulfillment, that we should try to fulfill ourselves in every way, that we should pursue our desires, we should pursue gratification. And you know what's really happening when you look at the way that culture is presenting sex? It's presenting it increasingly in animal terms. You have a desire, you have to act on it. Fulfill yourself. You're like an animal in heat, basically, is what it's saying. And it's defining love into primarily sexual terms. So when you love someone, you go have sex with them. And the idea of being in love with someone and not having sex with them, in the culture, that's unthinkable. And what we've got to realize that if God has designed things, then He's designed sexuality. And we shouldn't lower it to animal terms where it's just about your desire and that everything that you do is right and it's about self-gratification. No, God has created sex. He created it as something that is wonderful. But He has also created it and designed it within the context of marriage. And He said, here is my design, that you do not have sexual relations with somebody other than that one person who you married for life. And if you're single, you wait until you're married. And if you're married, you stay committed within that. That's my design. That's God's creationist perspective. He's created it with this structure, and it doesn't change. Now, a lot of times people present it as, well, God set these set of rules, and it's kind of abstract set of rules, and we see it as, our culture sees it as being restrictive. God's keeping us from sexual freedom and the pleasure that is our disposal. The picture that people often have is this idea of saying, if you really want to follow God, then you have to prove it by saying no to the pleasure of sex outside of marriage. You just have to say no to God, and He'll reward you in heaven. Now, that's a totally false view of God, and it's a false view of reality. See, what we've seen, again, is all these things are absolute truth. God has designed everything. So what that means is He's designed morality. And His design is something we saw a couple weeks ago in Proverbs chapter 8. When did He design the idea of morality? The Lord possessed me at the beginning of the work of the first of His acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, before the first, at the beginning of the earth. It's not something that God just made up and said, well, here's some set of rules and they could be different. When God designed, He said, this is the way that world works. And just like there's law of gravity, and if you break the law of gravity, and if you jump out of a building, you're going to fall and you're going to hurt yourself, so there's now moral laws, and if you deny those, if you break those, you're going to hurt yourself. And they don't change. The law of gravity doesn't change, and the law of morality doesn't change. In fact, it continues and gives us this warning in Proverbs 8. And now, sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instructions and be wise. Do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. If you obey these laws, you'll be blessed. God will bless you through them because you're aligning yourself with reality. But then it says, whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. This is life, but he who fails to find me injures himself, and all who hate me love death. If you deny it, if you just say, I'm going to do my own way, I'm just going to, what he's saying, you're going to injure yourself, and ultimately you're leading yourself to a path of death. Now, my friends, I'm not preaching and saying, sinners, and I'm just saying this is truth. And if you're involved in relationships outside of marriage, what I want to tell you is, you know what? Do you understand that you're playing with death, literally? And I say that out of love and out of compassion. And let me give one other just brief illustration. Think about traffic laws. Now, if somebody goes out here and says, I don't want to believe in the traffic laws, I want to drive whatever way I can, I'm going to drive whatever speed limit, ignore the red lights, you could do that, and in the short run, you might have more fun than the person who obeys the law. You probably will. But sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you. Sooner or later, you're driving 100 miles an hour, and you're going to get a ticket, and you're going to lose your license. You're going to pay a fine. Or more likely, you're going to be driving, you're going to run the red light, and you're enjoying it, but you run the red light, and suddenly you hit another car, and you're killed by it. And the fact of the matter is, whether you believe in them, whether you like them or not, they're true. And you could live a life, and you might enjoy it for the short run, but there will always be consequences. And in the same way, we can enjoy life, and you might have more fun in the short run to say, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want. But we cannot escape the reality that this is God's design. And the more that you get outside of God's design, the more that life is going to be broken. So where do we go from that? Do you understand that God is not just telling us this to make us feel guilty? He's telling us this because he wants us to be able to have a relationship with him. In closing, just very briefly, what we need to see is this beautiful picture is that God has designed marriage as our ultimate picture of our relationship with him. Do you know throughout the Bible it talks about God as the bridegroom, we're the bride? He teaches us that he wants relationship. You know what's incredible about this? When we talk about gender and like opposite, God is the ultimate like opposite. He's like us. We were created in his image, but he is opposite in us. He is holy. And when we think about that puzzle piece, I have a part that fits my wife, and I've got a part that will only fit God. All of us do. And we could strive to be able to fit that piece into our life that fits and that satisfies us, but nothing other than God will do it because we are created for him. He is the ultimate one that we need. And just like I need my wife, I need God far more than I even need her because it's only him that will ultimately help me be all that I want to be. But then as I walk away from him, and as I'm convicted by these things that I've done that is wrong, well, then what do? Do you know the ultimate thing is when you look at the picture of what he does, John 1, we're going to look at next week. Why did Jesus come? He came into the world. He came to his own, but his own people did not receive him. He came to pursue us. But even as he pursued us, we rejected him. And for many who've married, say, my husband, she rejected me. Just, I can't love him. Here we rejected God, and God pursued us while we rejected him. The story of the gospel is not, how good are you being? How hard are you trying? The story of the gospel is all of us have fallen short. All of us have fallen short, and my goal is not here today to beat guilt over somebody and say, if you don't align with God's, you just walk out and feel guilty and be bad. My goal is to say, do you understand that God points out these things and say, if you don't align, you're breaking yourself, you're chasing after death, literally. But I want to fix you, and I'm pursuing you to fix you. And Jesus Christ came because when we say, I can't fix myself, I can't change myself, and he said, here's what I'm going to do. He came and he lived a perfect life. He died on the cross, and he said, if you trust in me, I will forgive your sins. I will give you my righteousness, and I will teach you to be the person that you long to be. So he doesn't call us to come and fix ourselves up and to be the right kind of person so that we can know him. He calls us to come and admit that we're broken and surrender to his grace and allow him to do in us that which we could never do for ourselves. My friends, if you're here today, it's important that we not only understand the truth about creation, the truth about God's design, the truth about God's design in all these areas, but it's also important that we understand as we apply it to our own lives, it's not only what we think, what we act, and then as we wander away from him, that it's a call for us to see God's design, ultimately that he has designed us for relationship with him. We're separated from that apart from Jesus Christ, but the message of Christmas is that God came to pursue us. Do you have that relationship with Jesus? If you don't have that, he invites you to it this morning. I hope that this morning that you'll call out and say, God, I agree with you. I ask him to forgive you. God, make me the person that you long for me to be. God, I'm led this way, and I've been doing this, and I can't change myself. He's not asking you to change yourself. He's asking you to allow him to change you. Are you willing to do that? You can praise that this morning. I'd love to be able to talk with you more, talk to any of the staff or elders. Would love to pray with you after the service or this week and just help you know what that means, that you would live in the fullness of the blessing that God designed for you.